Hey guys, New Gamer here, back with another video, and today guys I'm doing another collection video. This will be my first collection video for 2024, and as you can see guys, today I'm going to be showing off my Duke Nukem game collection. Now Duke Nukem is a series that I've been a big fan of for quite a long time now, but it's a franchise that I pretty much never talk about on my channel, which is pretty crazy that thanks to Blaze Entertainment, Duke Nukem got 2 new releases last year in 2023, which is pretty insane. I would have never thought, like, at the very beginning of the year that, by the end of it, there would be 2 new Duke Nukem releases, let alone, like, a remaster of the first 2 games and, like, 2 collections with, like, all the more obscure Duke games on it and stuff. Just never thought in a million years that this would happen. But it got me thinking, like, since I got, like, the second collection finally recently, and I've got both Duke Nukems for the Evercade, and I thought, you know what, why don't I do a whole video showing off my entire Duke Nukem game collection? Because there really isn't a whole lot of these on YouTube. I mean, there's a couple from what I've seen, but they're all like really old videos at this point. There's not really a whole lot of videos of people showing off, their Duke Nukem games. So I decided, why not, I'll do one myself, since I've been in a bit of a Duke Nukem mood recently. So yeah, it's not a particularly big collection, and I sure as hell don't own every single Duke Nukem game. I mean, there isn't that many Duke Nukem games in the franchise. I mean, there's only really like 7 maybe, or maybe a little bit more. Like, for example, I don't own the Nintendo DS game, Duke Nukem Critical Mass. I would like to own that at some point, even though I've heard it's terrible. There's also like a weird obscure Duke Nukem game for the Tapwave Zodiac, Duke Nukem Mobile, I think it is. I don't own that either. Shocking, I know. I don't own Duke Nukem Manhattan Project, but I do have a trial version of it on the Xbox 360, which I'll show off at the very end because I do actually have a few digital Duke Nukem games that I'm going to show off as well. I don't own Zero Hour for the N64. I don't own everything, but I want to show off all my Duke Nukem games regardless because I've never really like shown them off before in a video. So yeah, so all that being said, let's just get straight into it. I've put all the games in order of release. So starting off with the oldest games here, we have the 3 Duke Nukems for the original PlayStation. Starting off with Duke Nukem, aka Duke Nukem Total Meltdown. This was the PS1 port of Duke Nukem 3D, released back in 1997. The PAL version is literally just called Duke Nukem, no like Total Meltdown subtitle or anything. This is the PS1 port of Duke 3D, and this version, I mean, for the time, it's decent, but it really, really hasn't aged well, mainly when it comes to performance. I mean, the other console versions of Duke Nukem 3 from around this time had their own issues as well. The Sega Saturn version, the N64 version, they had their fair share of issues as well, but the PlayStation version could have been the best one at the time, but it's just the performance of it. And the controls as well in this version are really awkward to go back to. And it's a shame because if the controls were better and if, the game actually ran at a steady frame rate, then it actually would have been a pretty decent port for the time, This version is actually unique because it also has a exclusive 4th episode, which I don't think it actually advertises on the back. No, I don't think so. But there is an exclusive 4th episode that was only in this version of the game. I think it was called Plug and Pray. So it had an exclusive episode that was only in this version. The other 2 console ports at the time, for the Saturn and N64, they didn't have their own exclusive episodes. So, that was a big win for the PlayStation version. And yeah, and this version also had a remix soundtrack. They redid all the songs from the DOS original. And in my opinion, they sound fucking awesome. The remixes aren't for everyone, but in my opinion, I really like them. But yeah, it's a manual right there. And the disc with the iconic atomic symbol. Looks pretty damn cool. But yeah, I mean, if you can get past the performance issues, I mean, it's still Duke Nukem 3D, it's still a good game, but it's far from the best version of the game to play, especially nowadays. Moving on to Duke Nukem Time to Kill. This was a third-person spin-off released exclusively for the original PlayStation in 1998, developed by N-Space. So yeah, so Time to Kill was a very interesting game. It was a third-person shooter, very inspired by like Tomb Raider. Yeah, it's pretty decent, I'd say. Duke travels back in time to different points in history, and it's yeah, I mean, control-wise, it's quite clunky to play these days, but it's not bad, I'd say. This is actually the re-release of the game with different disc art. The original release just had a plain black disc with the logo at the very bottom, and of course, there's a manual. Yeah, not really a whole lot to say because aside from recently when I replayed it again on the second Duke Nukem collection on the Evercade, which we'll get to in a minute, yeah, I hadn't played this game in a very, very, very long time, and going back to it recently, Yeah, it's still just as clunky as I remember, but it's not terrible. It's just aged pretty poorly, control-wise. All right, and then we have Time to Kill sequel, Duke Nukem Land of the Babes. New release, yeah, not anymore. So yeah, this was released in 2000, direct sequel to Time to Kill. Once again, it's a third-person shooter. It's basically more of the same, more or less. I mean, they tweaked a few things here and there, but it's more or less just more of Time to Kill, really. Haven't really played too much of it. There's a disc, and oh, what is this? Take-Two Interactive, Rockstar Games there. Got some old registration card. I completely forgot that was even in there. But yeah, again, not really much to say because I haven't really played this game a whole lot. But yeah, it is cool that it's got the original new release sticker on there. Which isn't actually a particularly rare sticker to find on a copy of Land of the Babes. Because I remember like searching for this game specifically on eBay, and tons of copies actually have that new release sticker on it. So it's not like a particularly hard thing to find, you know, a copy with this sticker on. It's actually surprisingly common. But yeah, so that's Land of the Babes. And then we have probably the most obscure Duke Nukem game, at least out of the ones I own. We have Duke Nukem Advance for the Game Boy Advance. This is just a loose cart, unfortunately. So yeah, so this game was released exclusively for the GBA. Some people think that it's a port of Duke Nukem 3D when it actually isn't. It's its own original game. It is a first-person shooter just like Duke Nukem 3D, and actually reuses a lot of assets like the weapon sprites and even some of the enemy sprites from Duke Nukem 3D as well. But yeah, it is its own original game, and it's pretty decent. Haven't played a whole lot of it, but you know, I'm looking forward to trying out some more because it's pretty good from what I played so far. Alright, and then we have the most infamous Duke Nukem game. You know, the game that really needs no introduction at this point. You know, the game that literally took forever to come out. Yeah, we all know the story of this game by now, Duke Nukem Forever. The fact that it was in development hell for like 15 years or whatever. You know, it actually holds the world record for the longest game in development, like ever. Which is pretty insane. But yeah, it was announced back in 1997, like a year after Duke Nukem 3D, and it didn't actually come out until 2011. And there's a whole host of reasons as to why it took forever to come out. I'm not going to get into all of that like right now because it is a long story. But yeah, basically the game ended up getting delayed over and over and over again. They basically like scrapped the game completely, like 4 or 5 times over the course of development. The game just kept constantly getting scrapped, and they were just like, it was just a complete mess. You know, the development of this game was just a complete mess, and by the time it came out, it was just a letdown. You know, I mean, this was the sequel to one of the best first-person shooters of all time, Duke Nukem 3D, and when it came out, it just felt extremely like outdated, and it just wasn't all that good. I thought it was okay. I didn't think it was as bad as what people say it was, but yeah, this is definitely nowhere near as good as Duke Nukem 3D. I mean, that really goes without saying. I mean, it's somewhat of a miracle that the game even released in any form whatsoever, considering how many times it was delayed. But yeah, by the time it came out, it just was a big letdown, and it's a shame. It's a shame that initial, especially that 2001 build of the game that had that amazing E3 trailer never came out, because that would have been amazing. You know, I mean, I know like a build of that leaked online like a couple years back, but yeah, man, that version of Duke Nukem 3, that's what we should have gotten back in the day, and not wherever the hell this was. All right, and then next I've got a special one right here, Duke Nukem 3D 20th Anniversary World Tour for the PS4. Now, the reason why I say this is one special is because the physical release, which I have right here, was exclusive to North America, hence the M4 Mature ESRB rating there. So yeah, so this was pretty much the latest release of Duke Nukem 3D, at least for consoles, the 20th Anniversary World Tour Edition, which came out back in 2016 to commemorate Duke Nukem 3D's 20th anniversary, which is pretty insane to think that it's been like, what, 8 years now since the 20th anniversary of Duke Nukem 3D? And just in a couple years' time, we're going to be on the 30th anniversary of the game, which is, God, that's weird to think. But yeah, 2016, they re-released Duke Nukem 3D again for PS4 and Xbox One. And then like 3 years later in 2020, just out of nowhere, they decided to put on the Switch, just for the hell of it. And it was a digital-only release. However, in America, specifically in GameStop, which is their, you know, the biggest game retailer in the US. Over here in the UK, we have a Game, but obviously in America, you gotta have a GameStop. Yeah, but they were the only ones actually selling a actual physical release of the game, which is pretty insane. I mean, I wonder like why that was, why they had that exclusive deal with GameStop. Like the fact that like they put in the effort to do like an actual physical release, but only decided to limit it to just one retailer. It's just, I really don't understand it. But yeah, regardless, that's how they released it anyway. This version of the game is actually pretty unique because this one, similarly to the PS1 version of Duke 3D, this one also has its own exclusive episode added to it as well. I think it's called Alien World Order, and it was made by the original developers, came back 20 years later to make an entirely new episode exclusively to this version of the game. They added some new weapons as well. They re-recorded all the vocals as well, so John St. John redid all these voice lines in the game. So yeah, so think of this as sort of like a remaster or like definitive edition or whatever you want to call it of Duke Nukem 3D. Yeah, there it is. This had to have been intentional, surely, because there's no way they did this on purpose. They literally, like, the whole of the disc is literally on his crotch. I mean, there's no way in hell that wasn't on purpose. But yeah, this is probably the best version of Duke Nukem 3 to get, at least on consoles. Definitely a must-own for, you know, any FPS fans. And the physical release for this actually isn't too expensive, at least from what I remember. It may have gone up in price, like, these days, but for the last time I checked on eBay, you know, it was relatively cheap. You know, you can also get a physical release for the Xbox One as well, although not for Nintendo Switch, which really sucks. Nintendo Switch you can only get digital, which I do have actually, which I'll show you at the very end. And then last but not least, I'm going to show both of these off together. We have the brand new Duke Nukem collections released exclusively for the Evercade. So starting off, we have Duke Nukem Collection 1 here, which has Duke Nukem 1 2 Remastered and Duke Nukem 3D Total Meltdown, which is the PS1 port. This just sort of came out of nowhere when this was announced earlier last year. Two brand new Duke Nukem collections released exclusively on the Evercade. It just seemed so out of left field, and especially with the announcement of Duke Nukem 1 and 2 Remastered, you know, I mean, that was just insane, you know, because Duke Nukem 1 and 2, very rarely, like, they did get like a Steam release back in like 2013, I think, but those games pretty much were never really ever re-released again, like after they initially came out. The fact that Blaze themselves were actually doing full remasters of the first two Duke Nukem games exclusively for this system was just insane, you know? Like, I never thought that, well, first of all, Duke Nukem would ever make a comeback in any way, but second of all, I never thought that we would ever see, like, the first two Duke Nukem games come back, because these games were pretty much, well, aside from maybe like a Steam release back in the day, they never really got re-releases. And, you know, they got, like, full-on remasters last year, which is just insane. It's a bit strange they chose, for Duke Nukem 3D, they chose the PS1 port instead of the more iconic DOS original, but it is what it is. But, yeah, this collection, just the fact that it exists is just insane, you know? And, yeah, and this remaster is still exclusive to Evercade. Will it come to other platforms? I mean, hopefully, fingers crossed, you know? I'll definitely buy again if it comes out on, like, the Switch or something. Especially if they could, like, partner up with Limited Run or something to do, like, a physical release of that. That would be, oh, that'd be so fucking cool. But, yeah, this is just insane, the fact that these Duke Nukem collections even exist. And I specifically put an Evercade VS on my Christmas list just because of these two Duke Nukem collections. Like, these were the reasons why I wanted an Evercade so badly. Duke Nukem 1 and 2 Remastered, they did an absolute phenomenal job with it. You know, just the games just play so much smoother now compared to the originals, which were just really choppy in comparison. And similarly to Sonic Origins, how they remastered the original Sonic games, you know, to be in widescreen, they did the same thing with Duke Nukem 1 and 2, and it just makes the games, like, so much better. I mean, you could toggle between the originals and the remasters, like, by pressing the select button, and, you know, it's just an instant transition between the two, and it's just, oh my god, this really is, dare I say, the reason to own an Evercade at the moment. There is a chance this could get released on other systems, but for the time being, like, if you're a Duke Nukem fan, this is the reason to own an Evercade, 100%. Like, even if you don't give a shit about any of the other games on the system, if you want to play the definitive version of Duke Nukem 1 and 2, you have to get an Evercade. You've got no choice. And, yeah, it's worth it, in my opinion. I mean, the system or the handheld, you know, depending on which one you get, are relatively cheap. The game's only, like, what, 20 quid each? So, yeah, it's worth it, in my opinion, especially if you're a big Duke Nukem fan. And then the second collection here, this one has the other two PS1 games, Time to Kill and Land of the Babes, and also has Duke Nukem Advance. So, yeah, the second collection has the more obscure games on it. This collection was pretty crazy as well. Like, I never thought that these games would ever get re-released, because none of these ones have. At least with Duke Nukem 1 and 2, that got, like, a Steam release, and I believe GOG, Good Old Games release as well at some point. But Time to Kill, Land of the Babes, and Duke Nukem Advance, these games have never been re-released before. Like, for the longest time, they just stayed on their original platforms they were first released on. You know, PS1 in the case of these two, and GBA in the case of Advance. So yeah, these are the first time these games have ever been re-released before. They're not exactly the same as the originals. Time to Kill and Land of the Babes originally had licensed music in both of them that had to be removed, obviously for copyright. And they also like tweaked some of the text as well, like the controls now has the controls to match the Evercade controller rather than the PS1 or the GBA. So yeah, so they've gone in and they also did the same thing with Total Meltdown as well. So these aren't the exact same originals as they were. They've gone in and tweaked some things, but they're still the same games at the end of the day. And yeah, there's that. And I did an unboxing of this recently as well. So if you guys want to check that out, these two are probably the biggest surprises of 2023, at least for me, because I never thought in a million years like these games would get a re-release. Like never in a million years, let alone on a niche system like the Evercade, because let's be honest, the Evercade appeals to a very niche audience, like mainly just like the diehard retro enthusiast. These are really awesome, man. I absolutely love these. These are like the reason to own an Evercade at the moment. Like even like diehard Evercade fans are saying like these are the best cartridges that they've ever released for the system so far. And yeah, I would have to agree with them. These are phenomenal. Especially Duke Nukem 1 2 Remastered. Oh man, they did such a good job. I can't recommend these enough. I honestly say, like, if you're that big of a Duke Nukem fan, or if you've simply never played these games before and you want to try them out, honestly, I'd say it's worth it. Honestly, go out, get an Evercade, and get both of these Duke Nukem collections. It's totally worth it in my opinion. I'm not like sponsored or anything by Evercade. Trust me. If you're a big fan of Duke Nukem, you owe yourself to get an Evercade just for 1 and 2 Remastered alone. I mean, it would have been nice if they came out on other systems as well and not just limited to the Evercade. Again, fingers crossed they might put out on other systems, but we'll just have to wait and see. But yeah, so those are all my physical Duke Nukem games, and then real quick, I want to show you, I don't have too many, but I do have a few digital Duke Nukem games on my Nintendo Switch. I have the digital version of, if I can find it. Yeah, I've got the digital version of Duke Nukem 3D 20th Anniversary World Tour, which I actually got for a steal, by the way. I remember like buying this like during a Black Friday sale or something, and it was like really, really cheap when I bought this. It was literally like £1.99 or something. Like legit, like I got this during like a Black Friday sale and it was like really, really cheap. So I was like, why the hell not? And real quick here, these are the two digital Duke Nukem games I have for the 360. Got Duke Nukem 3D and Manhattan Project. Duke Nukem 3D is the full version of the game. I had the trial version for the longest time, basically just like the demo. But only recently, actually, I think it was just shortly after last Christmas, I went ahead and bought the full version of the game. Mainly because the 360 Marketplace, as I'm sure a lot of you know, is actually shutting down in July. So I decided that I would pick up the full version of Duke Nukem 3D, while it's still available, because obviously, it's not going to be available to buy for much longer. But yeah, Manhattan Project's only the trial version though. Yeah, this game is a pretty interesting one actually. It's a throwback to the old Duke Nukem games. Like it's a sort of 2.5D side scroller. Yeah, I haven't played too much of it, but it's pretty decent from what I remember actually. But yeah, this is only the trial version, unfortunately. I forgot how much this is actually. Let's see, unlock full game. Oh, okay, that's not working. But yeah, if it's I don't know, I might get the full version if it's cheap enough. But anyway, guys, that was my entire Duke Nukem game collection. Again, not a particularly big one, but I hope you guys enjoyed it. Yeah, let me know down in the comments what's your favorite Duke Nukem game, and also let me know if you've picked up an Evercade along with the two Duke Nukem collections, because it is worth it in my opinion. Depending on how big of a Duke Nukem fan you are, it is definitely worth it. Even if you're not much of a Duke Nukem fan, these are still like really awesome games to have. But yeah, so yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed. Please like, subscribe, and peace. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Till then, take care now.